All right, it is 5:30 p.m. We are going to call to order this study session of the Escondido Union School District Board of Education. Do we have any public comments regarding closed session items? Seeing none, we will adjourn to closed session. It is 7 p.m. and we are going to reconvene this meeting of the Escondido Union School District for our study session. Can we bring the agenda up? All right, if we can start off with the Pledge of Allegiance, Mr. Reski, if you would be kind enough to lead us. All right, roll call. We have 4 members present. Mr. Olson had to leave early. We have no report out of closed session. Looking for an approval of the agenda for tonight.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Mr. Houston moves. Ms. Harper seconds. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes 4-0 with 1 not present. Do we have any public comments on our agenda items tonight? No public comments. Seeing that, we will move to our study session planning for the 25-26 school year.
Alrighty, well, good evening. Today we have a couple of different updates that we will be sharing with the board. And so we're going to be covering an update on our framework for the future and that work that's been happening at our sites. We also have a brief conversation about Limitless Learning Academy, and then also a presentation about cell phone policy. Yes, it's going to be so fun. But we are going to go ahead and start with our framework for the future. As you know, our vision to actualize the unlimited potential of every student has really was the inspiration for our framework. The framework really outlines the key pieces. It offers a roadmap of how we want to implement that vision. Through that, the development of the framework, we were able to identify some specific learning outcomes that are defined in our learner profile, as you are aware that all of our schools are implementing. And the learning model speaks to the how. How are we going to accomplish that? How are we going to make this actually come to life at our schools? We've identified that the learning model, for learning to really be learner-centered, we want our learning to be personalized, to be authentic, to be competency-based, and to be inclusive and equitable. And so through that, our framework also includes some specific EUSD big moves. And those moves include our school redesign process that over the course of 5 years, all of our schools will participate in this process to reimagine what the learning experiences should look like. Additionally, we would want to see the learning model implementation. We want to make sure that we're maximizing teacher collaboration time. We want to ensure that students are accessing authentic learning experiences, as well as preparing our learners for future challenges and opportunities. And so these shifts really require some Specific professional development. We know it's a shift. We want to see our teachers supported in that process as well as our administrators. And so when we talk about that learning model that we mentioned, we know that we want to give our teachers an opportunity to really dive into that and think about how they are designing their lessons that'll incorporate those aspects of the learning model. So this is just some of the work that's occurring across the district. We have some specific professional development for teacher teams around lesson design in order to ensure that they are really thinking about how to reimagine and plan their instruction so that it's focused on those learning model aspects. So here you have some pictures. We have Miller, Pioneer, and Central, those teams that are participating in the lesson design. And then we also have all of the schools that are in cohort 1. They also have teacher teams that are working on this process. And so all of cohort 1 that started that lesson design process last year, they're able to send teacher teams here where they're having the time to really look at the specific, their instruction and how they're designing it and have time together to collaborate around that. So for school redesigns, I know that in the past we've brought our school teams come and they've shared their pitches, their ideas for redesign. So last year that started with our 4 schools. We have North Broadway, Limitless Learning Academy, LR Green, and Mission Middle, who went through the process last year. And so currently now they continue that because it does take some time, but they are now in year 2 of that redesign process. And so this current year, we have our second cohort who started that. And so that's Lincoln, Rose, Felicita, and Bear Valley. And so what we wanted to do today is really be able to give you a sneak peek at some of that work. It will include some presentation from the LR Green team who are now in year 2 because they started last year. And then we'll also hear from a cohort 1 team with Bear Valley presenting as well. So I'm going to go ahead and invite up the LR Green team with Principal Crystal Underhill, who will introduce her team.
Good evening, Board President, School Board, Dr. Ibarra, and Cabinet. As Dr. Filia said, I'm Crystal Underhill, and I am the principal of LR Green Elementary School. I'll let my amazing colleagues here introduce themselves.
Marcy Karofsky, kindergarten teacher. Hello, I am Dina Wood, and I am a 3rd grade teacher.
Hi, I'm Lauren Laston, and I'm a kindergarten teacher.
They said they're just teachers, but they're really so much more than that. They didn't want to brag too much or take up too much of your time, but they are amazing leaders. So LR Green, as you know, is in cohort 1, and we have been working with the Learner Center Collaborative and with Ed Services to reimagine and redesign a day in the life of a Griffin at LR Green Elementary School. Learner Center Collaborative and Ed Services have truly been our North Star throughout this entire process. So our next slide, you can see there's been a lot of ideas and thoughts throughout this entire process from parents and teachers and our leadership teams and really all of our stakeholders. Learner Center Collaborative and our leaders of Ed Services have really been instrumental in helping us to take all of those thoughts and refine our processes and making sure we are systematic every step of the way.
Okay, and I'd also like to thank our board and everyone who has approved us to reimagine what a day in the life of a Griffin would look like. And Dr. Filia and Dr. Ibarra, thank you for participating in our cohorts as well. So we have taken all those ideas, and as you can imagine, with ideas comes an opportunity to do this reimagination, but that's difficult. So our learner-centered collaborative advisor, Cesar, was instrumental in our development of our plan that we have come up with. It is hard to engage teachers to be students, but they have done this beautifully. Every lesson that we come to, every time our cohort came together, and we're with the same 4 each time we go, it's a think tank. It truly is a opportunity to turn on your brain and think intellectually about what you want for your students and how you want their experience to be for us, for our community, and for anyone who comes into contact with anyone who goes to Eller Green. We come back taking this energy that we have during these meetings, bring that back as a leadership team to our grade levels, and then also bring that to the staff meeting. And the staff meetings that Crystal has put together for us, bringing back some of the things we have learned from our Learner Center days as cohorts, are just phenomenal. The energy in the room is, as high as it could be. People are, obviously it takes a lot of repetitions, but people have really bought in. And as you'll see in this next slide, just cross articulation last Thursday, we took a moment to celebrate our accomplishments, and then we took a moment to say, like, hey, where do we see ourselves going as grade level? And I'll pass off to Dina for the grade level.
All right, so not only are we in alignment with all stakeholders throughout EUSD, but also we are remaining centered in our teaching and learning through our California state standards. Our staff comes together, as Marcy explained, during cross-articulation meetings, and during this time we can share accomplishments and plan for moving forward in our redesign. And this allows us to kind of bounce ideas off of each other and effectively collaborate ourselves in order to move further along in our big moves as a staff and as a school towards our goals in redesign. So this are some pictures from our lesson design team, and I am part of that lesson design team as well. And as a lesson design team, our grade level has taken courses through the Learning Center Collaborative to help us design lessons with real world learning in mind, and kind of just starting from the end in mind and working backwards planning. And without them, I mean, they are really our guide on the side and just help us along as we go through the process of our redesign. So thinking about what it is that we want our students to know and how they will get there, we have taken these courses, and they have helped us to move along in that path. So that's a little bit about our lesson design, and then we bring that back to our school and share those designs with the rest of our staff and the rest of our colleagues. And we use what we did in our lessons as a guide to help us build towards our goal in redesign, which is the RIASEC lessons.
So you heard from Marcy, who's on the redesign team since the very beginning, and Dina, who's been on the redesign teams as well, and now also on the lesson design team. So we thought it'd be really nice for you to hear from a teacher who, yes, is a leader as well on our campus. However, she's a teacher on the receiving end. She's not coming to these lesson design team meetings or these redesign team meetings. So we thought it'd be really cool for you to hear that perspective as well. So Lauren.
Okay, so it's been really awesome just to hear and have the time at staff meetings and cross-articulation meetings to talk about how this is actually going to be implemented into the classroom, especially in kindergarten, because there are so many different ways to go. So this last month, we were working on A for artistic, and so we, as you can see, brainstormed different ways that you can be artistic, and then I, as a teacher, took some time with my team to just collaborate and think about how could I present that to students in a new way, and how can I use lessons that I've used in the past and maybe present that in a way that leans towards the artistic way of learning. So one way that we looked at that was doing an author study. So you can see in the top left corner, there's pictures of their writing. And so instead of just having them draw a picture, I gave them scrap papers and I told them to make yourself into a smart cookie and what would that look like. So just giving them an opportunity to navigate that part of their thinking, and then also inviting stakeholders in the community to be part of that artistic learning. So below that picture, you'll see a picture of students getting the opportunity to design their own animals through the Children's Museum. So really having the freedom to create and make from different materials and go out and put two animals together to make a new animal. And then also inviting our monthly art docents in to have artistic experiences with students, and they were able to create these awesome robots and design that and put whatever they wanted, and that was their vision, and parents and volunteers came in to just glue those pieces together for them. So it's been really fun to have that opportunity from Crystal and the leadership team and the lesson redesign team to be able to figure out how am I going to implement that into our classroom.
So the redesign process still continues. And as I was watching our staff bring in these real world experiences and bring in the community into the classrooms and into the learning, it was so fun to see our kids just learn and grow from each of these experiences. And I started to think, okay, what if we didn't stop here? What if these experiences didn't stop at LR Green? We happen to have the middle school right next door to us, but oftentimes we think of the experience of elementary and the experience of middle school as two separate entities. So I asked Cesar from Learner Center Collaborative and Dr. Filia, hey, what if we collaborated with the middle school that we feed into? We have the same community. What if we start to align our processes? And hearing that Bear Valley was now in cohort 2 of redesign, I thought, great, what if we collaborated and I told them what we're doing, and then maybe they can start to streamline the process into middle school so it does become more of an alignment. Thankfully, Bear Valley was super open to the idea. Learner Center Collaborative and Dr. Filia got us together, and we've been collaborating ever since, and they are going to talk about their redesign journey and how we've been collaborating and bringing this to life already. So Bear Valley.
Oh, you're good. And, all right. Good evening, School Board President, School Board, Dr. Barr, and Cabinet. Tonight I brought with me our 7th grade teacher, Miss Camille Flores. Teacher of the Year. Thank you. Also guru of our ELOP program. And also Assistant Principal, Mrs. Rawl. Bear Valley is excited to be part of Cohort 2 and imagining and developing what we want Bear Valley to look like 5 years from now. When we began this process last year with our empathy work and really focusing on creating a student voice on campus, one of our big implementations last year was the creation of our Student Advisory Board. This year, with the support of LCC and Ed Services, we have embarked on the redesign journey and are very excited in what we have come up with and developed. So far this year, we've had 3 full-day design sessions led by members of the Learning Center Collaborative, 2 full days of visits to various schools that have gone through the redesign process, a full day of team planning at our site, and most importantly, a discovery day at BVMS where we interviewed students, staff, and parents on what is working at Bear Valley and what they want Bear Valley to look like. Throughout this process, we have continued to include all of our stakeholders by updating them on the process and continuing to solicit feedback and expand our stakeholders to community members, high schools, businesses, and all of our Bear Valley parents. From the large amount of feedback we have gathered and through the various activities we have participated in as a team, we have developed a new mission, vision, and values for Bear Valley, as well as 5 big moves we plan to start planning for and implementing next year. Just last week, our team pitched these big ideas to our staff and continued our empathy work and asked for feedback. Now I would like to turn it over to Ms. Rawl and Ms. Flores, who'll be sharing our mission, vision, and values and our next big 5 moves.
Okay.
So this is our vision and mission statement and our values. For Bear Valley, it was really vital for us to have some sort of clear identity so that if people are going sideways or other directions, we all can come back to this identity. As a team, we developed our vision and mission statement based on our core values, which are listed here. We also wanted it to be concise enough so that students can reiterate it and explain to us what's our vision and what's our mission. These values are already present on our campus, but we wanted to bring it to the forefront of our redesign. And then just recently, we voted as a staff that we want to keep it real. So that's what our values are. So our vision statement is, at Bear Valley, we commit to creating an inclusive environment, empowering students to become confident, responsible leaders who are prepared for high school and beyond as thriving, authentic community members. Mission statement, at Bear Valley Middle School, we prioritize real-world learning, leadership opportunities, and personal growth to empower students to become authentic members of their community. And then REAL stands for Real World Empowered Authentic Leaders.
So through our discovery process, the redesign team gathered feedback from stakeholders, as Mr. Reski already shared, and we analyzed that feedback to create 5 big ideas that we will implement over the next 5 years. Each of these ideas meets a need that our stakeholders identified and aligns with our learner profiles, placing an emphasis on students exploring what it means to be a leader within each of the learner profiles. We will expand these ideas over the next 5 years to create a campus where every student embodies the learner profiles and understands what it means to be a leader. Our big ideas are that students are involved in leadership opportunities during the school day and know how their involvement is building their leadership skills so they can set goals for themselves and articulate those goals and their progress towards mastering those goals under the lens of leadership. Students will have a portfolio that showcases their learning. The portfolio will be based around their mastery of the learner profiles, and they will be sharing these portfolios with various stakeholders, families, business partners, community partners that we have at the end of each school year. Staff will utilize collaboration time to focus on what students need to know and how we're developing the learner profiles. So really being specific with how we're looking at data and how we're using that data to understand where students are at as they develop their mastery of the learner profiles. We're going to develop and foster community partnerships to expose students to service projects and highlight these projects through showcases that build upon one another each year as they move from 6th through 8th grade. One of the big things that came out of all of our school visits as we were partnering with LCC is the importance of community partnerships and bringing these real world authentic learning experiences to students. So we want to really highlight that over our next 5 years. And our final big idea is to provide opportunities for students to become comfortable with their own voices and then confident speaking and sharing their ideas, so ownership over their own learning. So we've started working on some of these big ideas in our collaboration with LR Green.
All right. This year, one of our goals, along with LR Green, we wanted to create opportunities for 5th graders to come onto our campus and see all the great things happening and create an excitement for their middle school journey. We have been able to strengthen this collaboration by supporting LR Green's redesign plan and the implementation of the RIASEC. This year, we had the opportunity to engage 5th graders so far in 5 separate activities on our campus. The first one was a focus on being investigative, which is the I in RIASEC, in which students conducted an experiment with our 7th grade science students. The second opportunity was in the area of artistic, where 5th grade students worked on a project with our advanced art students at Bear Valley and them being the mentors. The third opportunity was in the area of social, where LR Green students came to our club rush at lunch and were exposed to the many activities and clubs we offer our students after school. The LR Green 5th graders also had the opportunity to engage in enterprising, where they visited our first annual health fair during lunches to see the various occupations in the area of health by visiting 12+ interactive booths. And scheduled for next week, on March 25th, The fifth graders will be coming over to work with our Bear Valley TV crew and advanced digital media students, where the focus will be on the word conventional. And the students will be taking part in film, editing, and creating. We have witnessed the many benefits of this collaborative partnership, and our goal is to continue and increase these opportunities even more next year with our own redesign implementation. And in closing, to kind of wrap up our first year in cohort 2, I have to be honest, the idea of redesign for Bear Valley was mentioned late last year, and I was nervous and really unaware of what the process consisted of. What I have realized in this journey so far is that it is something every school should go through every 5 years. By looking at data, gathering information from all of our stakeholders, and really looking at our students, families, and community members' need through the guidance of Ed Services and the Learning Center Collaborative has been very beneficial. The school visits have really strengthened ideas and made us at Bear Valley realize the importance of community partnerships and student ownership over their learning. This process has really brought new life to our campus with our family and staff, and has created a sense of excitement of what could be next year and over the course of the next 5 years. Our ultimate goal, as our mission statement says, is creating an inclusive environment, empowering students to become confident, responsible leaders who are prepared for high school and beyond as thriving, authentic community members. And by students taking part in these activities that work towards this goal, engagement will increase, students will have a sense of connection to school, students will want to come to school, and student achievement will increase. We thank the board and cabinet for this opportunity and look forward to finalizing our plans and implementing our big moves next year. Thank you.
Thank you once again to both teams for sharing some highlights of your journey. Did the board have any questions or anything to comment to them?
I just had a comment because I think what you said in your last part is the most important thing, is looking outside of, of our schools and how we can improve it. And I think this redesign process gives you that opportunity, but that should be happening anyway, and you see the change it makes. And so I really appreciate that comment. And I'm excited to see the collab between the two classes or sites.
I'm really pleased that you guys are taking advantage of your local surroundings. Like, you guys are perfect. It's perfect right next to Kit Carson Park, so the classroom doesn't have to be confined to the classroom. It can expand beyond even our fence lines, so thank you.
All right. Thank you again. We're going to pivot now, and as we're talking about redesign and reimagining, we wanted to circle back on Limitless Learning Academy and just be able to process a little bit. We did have an opportunity to meet with those teacher teams as we relook at what the possibilities might be for the coming school year. So I know at our last meeting it was discussed around the idea of Limitless and the idea of being able to really take a look at their enrollment and having to make some decisions around the next steps. Maybe we'll pause and say good night because you guys have to get going and get yourselves ready. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. They're welcome to stay, but I figured. All right, so just revisiting this particular conversation that we had about Limitless, some of that was just around taking a look at their existing enrollment. And so these are just projected numbers that we're looking at. And so because of that, the discussion was around really looking at just 4th grade through 8th grade for next school year. And you could see there that in talking to the teacher teams, although it is, of course, a shift, but we are looking then at the 2 teachers that would be able to plan for 6, 7, 8, and then 1 teacher who would look at a 4, 5 combo. And so that's generally what the proposal was there. And so we had a discussion and talked to those teachers and processed what that might look like. And so the suggestions or the proposed ideas are here as was mentioned at our last meeting. And so the shift would be, again, from moving limitless learning to a school, from a school to a program, and then these are the grade levels that would be supported.
So I'm all in favor of moving it from a school to a program. That makes perfect sense. Because they will, as a program, they'll be able to maintain some level of autonomy, some level of still having their own personality. I do wonder, it's just a question at this point, do we often see additional enrollment? And I'm specifically looking at first, second, and third grade because I know that many of those parents are feeling very left out because we're not looking at supporting those grades. I'm wondering if we ever get additional enrollment as the school year opens.
We did pull that information. I'm looking over to Trent Smith because we did take a look at that, but it wasn't a significant number that comes in throughout the school year. Single digits is what I would say.
The younger students is just not as, typically where we see the need from our families is definitely, as reflected by the numbers, is in typical upper grades and mostly in middle school, where you're starting to see the need of families looking for that hybrid experience.
Yeah, and certainly I support having students in those lower elementary grades in a situation where they're getting full socialization for the entire school day. Can I just ask a question on the second column, the school of choice, first choice? Does that mean that that number of students are in a different area and that's they're requesting Limitless as a school of choice, or that they were given a school of choice somewhere else? What does that number mean?
The way to enroll into Limitless is only by school of choice. So they have a different school of residence, and then they're asking, then they fill out the form to apply to go to Limitless.
So those two are not at Limitless currently. They're wanting to go to Limitless as a second grade, as a first grader.
Correct, because there's no kinder.
Well, kind of piggybacking on what you said, I'm in agreement that it should be a program and not a school, but I think we made a commitment to these families, and I would like to see the second and third grade supported for the time being. And I mean, we can eliminate those grades as they move up, but we made a commitment to those families, and I think we have siblings in there as well. I don't know if would that be one more FTE we would need to support those students if
Yes.
we decide to, because I don't know, I would feel bad. They committed. It's a great, it's a great program, and their families are there. I would hate to see us for 2 more years. Could we support it for 2 more years until they are in 4th grade, and then obviously not have any more enrollment in those grades, but support the ones we've already made a commitment to?
Sure, and that is,
That's
the
definitely
board can
within the
direct us
realm
to
of
do that.
possibilities. If the board is saying, let's commit to
agree.
second, third. Okay, see.
So I was eventually going in that direction.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. I couldn't have said it as well as you did, so that's fine. What fiscal impact of that?
One more. Fiscal impact. 1 FTE.
So if we added an additional FTE, I think that we would be able to make that work, looking at the second and third graders that are on here.
I really think that's the right thing to do.
I think we have.
The first grade for next year, that's new enrollment, so I've said if we didn't have the new enrollments, we just focused on the kids that are already
Yeah,
there.
No new enrollments.
So
just
second and third.
support the ones that are
Just
already
a second and third combo, and that would be 1 FTE. And that person, that's a small number, and potentially could assist the other teachers or do some collaboration.
And for the financials aspect of it, if we did the 4th FTE until those students matriculate out, and then in the future years, we're back down to the 3 for the upper grades, that we would be able to fit that into our budget. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
what I-
Yeah.
Okay.
We have consensus there, it sounds like?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Strong consensus. Yeah, that's called direction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our third topic, then we're going to pivot again. And the board had a discussion around cell phones and had requested a presentation. And so we have some information tonight. And so I'm going to invite up Trent Smith, our Director of Integrated Student Supports.
Good evening, members of the board, members of the cabinet. As you know, my name is Trent Smith, the Director of Integrated Student Supports. For anybody watching tonight, might be a couple. I know mobile communication devices, more specifically smartphones, is a real hot topic right now. And so what I wanted to is kind of give you some information that I've been working on, ultimately with the goal of having you all kind of look at the existing policy and seeing if maybe you want to change it or update it. So I want to start with the policy 5131 that was actually updated last in 2014. So it's getting a little old, this policy. But essentially, it restricts mobile devices during class. And the key points being that devices have to be off during class time unless a teacher says that the student can use it, right? And then restrictions on privacy, respecting others' privacy, and then medical exemptions is a big one. There are students that need to have smartphones with them for medical reasons, so we can't prevent them from having access. And then we've had a long-standing policy of confiscating phones when they're misused, and that's been around since I started being a principal 20 years ago. Okay, so new Assembly bill came out in 2020, 272, that specifically empowered schools to further restrict the use of these mobile communication devices. And want to point out that, key there are those continued exceptions that we have to be aware of. And the tricky one is emergencies. Students have the right to possess a smartphone in the event of an emergency. They also can utilize those smartphones at school if they're given permission by a teacher or administrator. If they have a medical condition that's authorizing them by a physician to have that smartphone. And then if there's an IEP or a 504 that authorizes a student to have access to a smartphone, that would also entitle them to use it at school. So that all came with Assembly Bill 272. From that bill, we devised a student handbook policy, something that parents can read that's in friendly language, but essentially to boil that down, all students can see on our school handbooks that devices must be off during instructional time. That devices are allowed in emergencies with teacher administrator permission for medical reasons or a part of their IEP or 504. Can't infringe on the privacy of others, and then misuse or unauthorized use can lead to confiscation, searches, discipline, including off-campus actions that threaten school safety. So you know that cyberbullying is a big thing, right? And a lot of times the use of the smartphone, we can tie into issues happening at school, even when they start outside of school. And then of course the liability piece, that we're not taking responsibility for lost, stolen, or damaged mobile communication devices. Okay, so all pretty standard, right? I want to point out to you that our current practice at all of our sites is generally to warn a student who has their cell phone out the first time. The second time, you would confiscate the phone, lock it up in the office, and the child would have to come to the office after school to regain their device. On a third offense, the device would be confiscated and a parent would have to come and pick up that device at the end of the school day. Now, beyond that, there really isn't a consistent consequence. This is not considered an ed code violation, so it's not something that would get logged in PowerSchool, for example. Something that would be maintained in the office because somebody has to keep track of how many times that child has had their phone confiscated, essentially. Now, we have a new Assembly Bill, 3216, and this actually modifies Ed Code 48901.7. They call it the California Phone Free School Act. Now, what does that mean? Well, essentially it means that school districts now must develop policies with input from stakeholders, students, parents, and educators. And this policy must be updated every 5 years. Also, it does point out that school officials and staff may not access or monitor students' online activities. That is specified in that Assembly bill. The exceptions come back, and they're still the same. Emergencies or perceived threats, a student must be in possession of a cell phone so that they can use it in that emergency. Or permission granted by a teacher or administrator, medical reasons, and of course the IEP or 504 plan if it happens to be written into that. So the big thing here, of course, is that we need to, with this new Assembly bill that does go into effect by July 1, 2026, we need to start gathering that stakeholder input. And so the good news is on January 15th of 2025, the design team did meet, and they reviewed current policies and practices and evaluated the effectiveness of those policies. They did some brainstorming, and fortunately I was able to kind of summarize their input. So let's go over that right now. Again, the design team has members of the community, parents, educators, administrators. Stricter enforcement was a big theme, right? So they felt that more aggressive language in the policy would be appropriate. They felt that banning smartphone use during the school day would be appropriate. Now, I want to point out when we say banning, of course, we're not talking about not allowing them to bring smartphones to school, right? Because they have a legal right to do so. Banning simply meaning that they wouldn't be able to have them out and use them during the school day. Consistent consequences for violations, which I do feel that we have right now, but in fact they are not specifically delineated for families to see at this point, and so that is something that we would need to do to delineate those consequences very specifically. Alternative solutions, they talked about smartphone lockers for secure storage. They talked about device locking technology and increasing access to cell phones for, increased access to school phones for student communication, right? Parent communication, education, they want to be proactive about communication with emergency procedures to alleviate parent anxiety. They were interested in comprehensive community campaigns to raise awareness about the digital addiction, cyberbullying, responsible phone use. Talked about parent trainings on phone management and parental controls and online safety. And then regular reminders to parents about our mobile communications device policy. And then finally with teachers, they want clear board policies protecting them from confiscating phones. So it's pretty common for teachers to confiscate phones, and while they're in possession of that phone, they're afraid that they're going to be liable if it's stolen or damaged, right? Typically what'll happen is a teacher will take that phone down to the office where someone in the office will take possession and lock it in a drawer, right? But there is that uncomfortability for teachers. And then of course training and support to enforce any no device policy that we happen to put into place. Now, the good news is we kind of have a pretty restrictive policy as it is, because typically phones are just not allowed to be out on campus, not during class, not during lunch, not during passing periods. And that's been a pretty standard policy that we have. But the students still have those phones in their possession, and so you're still going to have misuse of that policy on occasion, right? Any questions so far? All right, so I gathered together the assistant principals. We do meet occasionally to talk about middle school related topics, and one of those topics was wanted to gather their feedback on cell phone misuse and how big of an issue they thought it was. So essentially they all kind of reported back to me that they didn't see any significant issues with the current cell phone policy. They are used to dealing with students' misuse of the policy and having phones out. And again, they go through those consequences of confiscation, but nobody really felt that it was like a huge issue that they have to fight with students on all the time. All middle schools feel that they have implemented pretty efficient systems for restricting and managing student cell phone use on campus. Did bring up the topic of lockable bags, because I know in LA Unified that's something they've allocated around $7 million to purchasing, right? And if you're not familiar, these lockable bags basically have magnet locks, and the way you open them is you put them on a magnet, demagnetizer kind of device, and that device would be held with the teacher, and so you'd have to go to the teacher to unlock your bag once your phone's in it. They were really concerned, expressed a lot of apprehension about the logistics of managing the daily collection and return of cell phones. Another thing that comes up too is in the event of an emergency, if all of your students have their phones locked in a bag, how do they get access to their phone in an emergency? Because it's going to be kind of hard to have one teacher run around and unlock all these bags, especially if it's like a lockdown, there's a school shooter or something. It's just going to be kind of more pandemonium than is probably necessary. But right now, LA Unified is ready to deal with that. I read an article that basically their response to the lockdown scenario is that they would just they wouldn't release the bags to this, or the phones to the students until maybe an hour had gone by and things had settled down a little bit. But still, you're in lockdown mode. I don't know. We know that in an emergency, if students have access to their phones, they're immediately texting their families, right? We've talked about sometimes how that can be a detriment if we're trying to get law enforcement or fire trucks and parents are blocking the roads because they've all gotten text messages that their child's in an emergency scenario. So yeah, it's kind of tricky, right, with those bags, but they definitely were not feeling the bags were a good idea. And they've also thought that you might get some pushback from parents who enjoy having their children sometimes having their phone because they can reach them, they can track them with Live 360. And I guess the good news with the bag is they're still going to be able to track them, they just couldn't necessarily text or talk to them during the school day.
Trent, real quickly, on the policy effectiveness, the middle school AP teams are saying there's no significant issues. I'm wondering from your experience as a middle school principal, how much time are they spending? I mean, I understand they've got the system down, but how much time is being spent on those cell phone violations and all of that? I
mean, it's certainly an issue, and it involves all staff. Noontime supervisors frequently will confiscate phones, teachers, and of course administrators. It just, I mean, it is an issue, but it's not an issue that really rises to a significant level for them. There's certainly other things like dealing with vape pens. They'd much rather not deal with vape pens and deal with cell phones. But, you know, over the 13 years that I was principal, it was an issue, but it wasn't like
unmanageable.
It wasn't unmanageable because I always felt like the vast majority of kids follow rules, and the ones that don't follow the rules, it's very hard because regardless of what policies have in effect, they're just going to flaunt those rules. And we don't have legal backing to basically not allow kids to bring their phones to school. So that's where it was that confiscation. Really the thing for us, for those repeat offenders, was the parent would eventually get so upset having to come down and pick up the phone that eventually they just stop coming down, and then we'd have the phone for the rest of the year. You know? But again, my experience was most parents are very passionate about their child having a cell phone on their person at all times. All right, now we did survey our EOSD staff, and as you can see here in these little tiny graphs, we surveyed all of our teachers, TK through 8, our counselors, our social workers, our administrators, apparently our district substitute, and one SAI teacher. So 86.7% of respondents were teachers, and as you can see in the lower right-hand corner, slight majority of our respondents were elementary teachers or those that work with elementary students, but pretty balanced input there. So out of 376 respondents, cell phones are a source of distraction in the classroom. There is strong agreement with that they are a distraction in the classroom. And cell phones as a disruption outside of the classroom, again, strong majority believe that they are a distraction both inside and outside of the classroom. Is the current cell phone policy working? Well, as you can see there, more than half do not agree that the current policy is working. A lot of neutrals there, but you know, based on the input, you can see that there might be some room to update that policy, right?
It looks like about 18% of people think that it is working and no further restrictions are necessary.
And some of those could be administrators, right? Yeah, I think that there's, you know, for those that understand the current cell phone policy and understand the consequences involved, you know, I think there's room for improvement there. And our design team felt the same. all right? So that's pretty reflective. Should cell phones be stored in designated areas? And this is a question that addresses the idea of a locking bag or even a cabinet that a classroom might have that can be locked, where students would store their phones in a locker. You can see here that a significant majority, about 65% there, feel that that would be a good idea.
67, actually.
67, yes. I'm not good at quick math.
We're actually 68.
So,
pretty
you know,
strong
that's a pretty
majority.
significant number of folks that feel that that would be a valid option. Now, do all of those folks have an awareness of the complications involved with having lockable bags and with all the policies? No. I mean, these are folks that did a survey, and this is just kind of their opinion without having a lot of detailed information about the pros and cons. But that said, you know, there seems to be support for that. Now, one of the more interesting questions had to do with teacher willingness to assist in the process of collecting, storing, and redistributing phones. And here, it appears that about half surveyed wouldn't quite be interested in supporting the process behind collecting, storing, and redistributing phones, because it would be a process. I can't tell you it wouldn't take away from instructional time. Whether it's happening at the gate or in classrooms, time would have to be devoted at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day to, you know, collect and redistribute. And, you know, there are certainly pros and cons there. If students had their phones in lockable bags or stored, you know, perhaps you wouldn't have as many violations of cell phone policy. But one of the things I was reading about LA Unified and the Yonder bags, they called them Yonder bags, they're lockable magnet bags, is that students will bring a burner phone or an old phone, and then they'll put that in the lock bag, but they'll hold on to their smartphone. Because, you know, kids are smart. That's what they'll do.
Well, then there should be stiff consequences.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, what the articles that I read did say was that it seemed, even though kids were circumventing the system, they still were less likely to have their cell phones out because they understood that it was a big deal. And so that's where we have. I want to share with you some potential actions that you could consider taking, if you'll bear with me just for a moment. First option being that you could keep the existing policy as is and allow students to continue to hold on to their phones, kind of an honor system, if you will. And of course, the policy would vary specifically because it doesn't currently specifically state that cell phones cannot be used while a student is on campus. There's a lot of language around during instructional time that you may consider removing so that it's more inclusive of the entire day, or even better, while on campus, right? So that it covers your before and after school times. Storage containers is another option. You see I put a little picture there that kind of overlapped the sentence. Not my best work, sorry about that. Storage containers, TK through 8, you could buy one of these for every classroom at around $25,000 total, or just middle school for around $7,000. I think they price out around $40 to $50 a pop, but they're lockable and they could be stored in classrooms for the teacher to basically manage. I should point out that Quantum Academy has recently expressed interest in piloting a locking cabinet for their 7th and 8th graders, mainly because it would only cost them $200. So they were like, hey, let's give it a shot. We wouldn't mind. And they're a pretty progressive group of people, and they're feeling that might be a cool thing to pilot. If you're interested in what that would look like, we could entertain that idea. Locking bags, I pictured here the popular Yonder bag, which runs around $25 to $30 a person. And if we were to buy those for all of our students, TK through 8, you'd look about $430,000. If you just did middle school, around $130,000. Of course, these require check-in and check-out, and then staff would have to lock and unlock those bags at the beginning and end of the day. But the students would have them in their possession, so there wouldn't be that fear of, like, you know, us being responsible by holding them in a locker. I do want to point out that the assistant principals had a suggestion. While they did not like the idea of everyone having a locking bag, they kind of like the idea of maybe just having 30 bags per school, and that they could use those as like a 4th strike. So you remember the 3rd strike was the parent comes, picks up the phone, Well, maybe the fourth strike could be, now every day you go to the office, you put your phone in the lockable bag, and then that's for the remainder of the year. Like, you've hit that limit of, you're now checking that phone in every time. Again, they could use that burner phone concept and circumvent the system, but that could potentially be a low-cost $5,000 for middle school specifically, to do it that way. And then what would be appropriate with all of these potential actions is an awareness campaign that I'd be happy to promote and work on the advertising with, as far as raising awareness with our students and families about the negative impacts of mobile communication devices, specifically on learning. As we know, it impacts learning and also mental health and well-being. So those are my proposed actions. Any questions for me at this time? It's a lot to think about.
Can you put it back to the options? That way there.
Yes, sir.
So I think we would probably have consensus on the final one, the awareness campaign. I think that's vital, yes. The burner phone, yeah, there are students who do that. I've experienced that recently at camp when we take all of our phones away before we go, and kids will do that. And I agree with you. They then are very unwilling to get their other phone out because they know.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't worry much about the burner phones. And then if they are found with them, then you're having a parent conference right away, I assume. Okay, thoughts?
I like the cabinet idea. It seems cost effective and it might be a good pilot program.
The one at,
Well,
as a pilot at Quantum?
Because it's not just, it's a social thing, and it's so distracting for these kids. They're not interacting. They're not learning to interact one-on-one. And I've read articles where they talk about the fact when kids don't have their phones through lunch, they actually are talking to one another. They're out in nature maybe playing games or something. Just being kids rather than, it's so, and I don't know what you can do to fix it, because it seems to be, it's not just kids. It's the adults now too. Everywhere I go, people are locked onto their cell phones, and it's so sad. Wherever I go, I bring a book, and I have my book, and I'm actually turning the pages, and I look around, and there are people with little children, and the children are like hanging on to their mothers, and their mothers' eyes are glued to a screen, and it's a societal problem. I don't know how we can help it, but we need to at least try to make a dent in our community to help these kids, to pry them away from their security blankets and teach them to interact again with one another.
I have a question.
Yeah, go.
This is reference to the Assembly Bill 272, and it has the exception saying they provides exceptions for emergencies or perceived threats. So if we do lock it up in a cabinet and there is a perceived threat, is there any liability that comes back onto to the school district because that child did not, per law, have a phone available to them to do whatever it is that they wanted to do because they perceived a threat?
So LA Unified must have had this conversation, right, when they decided to use these lockable bags. And I think it's a very gray area, right, that if we're preventing a child from accessing their phone in an emergency, then it's incumbent upon us to find a loophole in that law. And to go back to what LA Unified stated was that, well, if there was a lockdown and it lasted less than an hour, we wouldn't bother unlocking the phones. But if it lasted longer than an hour, then we would probably unlock them. So you can imagine that, I think at face value, it does kind of contradict that law.
My perception is if there's an emergency and the law says that a child has the right to have a phone, and we have prevented that child from having that phone for whatever reason.
Right. If I could get
Would
a
there-
sales rep from Yonder Bag to come out, they would have a wonderful answer
Well,
to
of
your
course it
question.
would, because they're trying to sell us something.
Yeah,
I'm thinking this is more of I think more of a legal issue for liability back on the school, because if something happened, let's say there was an emergency and a child got injured.
Well, this
and
legislation is a result of the school shootings.
Right.
When Columbine and,
Right.
when it started, it happened frequently, they needed students to call if they were trapped somewhere, and that's what the result of the legislation, that you had to allow kids to have them for such purposes.
Right.
So you're right. If we're in a situation, the more difficult it is to unlock, the more, I would say, liability we would have.
And I would think that would be something we would need to confer with some type of legal authority before moving forward in doing something like this. I mean, I like the idea of limiting their access, but if the law says they have the right to have it in an emergency, the question then becomes, what is an emergency? Okay, each child could perceive an emergency differently, and then let's say after the emergency, the family comes back and says, my child is now scarred for life, you now need to provide counseling for the next 30 years.
And hence why,
So
one of the requirements of the laws is you engage your community, you engage the parents, you engage all stakeholders, so we can get to a policy that everyone can live with.
If you look at the results of the survey, actually, it was 84% of the respondents said that the current policy is not working.
Yeah.
Because people don't want, and here's the element, when you look at it, and I could see it from the teacher's point of view, they're constantly having to put it away.
Yeah.
Put it away. The fact of the matter is, unless they have a legal right to have it in the event of an emergency, so we can't totally have them put it, unless we store it, and so that's where we look at those options.
Is
Store it in, you walk in, or you have those lockable bags, but then you get into, how do you unlock them in case of an emergency?
But
Because those magnetized ones, I mean, you can only one.
You have to do each one individually, but that's why this cabinet, if you look at
Yeah,
the
the
picture of it.
cabinet would be a lot
just
easier.
open the
You open
door
one, and then everyone's
and hand out
running
the
to
cell
grab their
phones so
phone.
people find their cell phones. yeah.
So,
you could be potentially creating a situation where children are getting injured because they're rushing to the phone.
Right.
Or they don't get it at all. I mean, I'm just conflicted because I don't want to see liability fall upon the district by a parent that says that their child was not provided that phone when, and like I said, their perceived emergency. So a perceived emergency may not be something that I see as a perceived emergency, but that child does. So therefore, am I breaking the law by not allowing that child to use the phone?
at the
that's-
same time, the ambiguity of perceived emergency, I cannot tell you the number of times I have dealt with kids who are in perceived emergencies because so-and-so is saying things about me and I have to get on my phone to see what they said.
Exactly.
So I'm not concerned with the liability. I mean, we certainly need to cover ourselves as a district, but the perceived harm of having kids continually on their cell phone, plugged into the phone, dramatically outweighs the potential harm of possibly having some emergency situation in which we need each student to have a cell phone. I'm not sure how a cell phone is going to help you in case of an emergency. I get the state law, but it's all ambiguous language because perceived emergencies are perceived. We already, as part of our current policy, if we confiscate a phone, and we confiscate phones every day, every school, I believe, we're then denying that student access to that phone. So we're already there.
But, and the only question that I'm trying to put forth is, have we had someone provide us with a legal.
Let's get that
evaluation of
guidance.
this,
Let's get that
so that-
guidance.
So that we do not.
We can
open our-
definitely do that
So we
research
don't
as well.
open ourselves up to a liability, and if they're saying, hey, after reviewing the whole law, I see no problem doing this, at that point, I would say move forward with maybe doing the pilot of the cabinets for quantum. But
I
until
would-
we- But until we have an opportunity to have a legal resource come to us and say, these are the parameters in which you should be working within this law, me personally would want to hold off, just for that liability standpoint.
So can we get that legal guidance, please? And can we, as quickly as possible, move forward with a small-scale pilot at Quantum, if they're the ones who are, they've got a limited number of students, and can we move forward with that pilot to see how that works? Possibly, I'm wondering if we might be able to do that before the end of the year as a pilot. I don't know if that's short. That's
If we can get the cabinets, obviously, we could.
I've
And
got
it's such a small, I'm sure we could.
We could probably build them in our workshop.
Yeah. I've got
That
another.
would take a little longer.
Yeah. I've got another question about our current policy. We currently have unless they're needed for instruction. I just have an objection because we tend to have this idea that all the kids have a smartphone, but smartphones or cell phones in general, when a teacher says, everybody get out your smartphone, it's like, gosh darn it, I don't know if this happens because we've got better technology in the elementary district, but that's really, it brings out the difference in your social ability. Not every kid has one. Not every kid has one that has an internet connection and the bandwidth that they're allowed to use. And many of our kids have parents who just say, no, you're not going to get one. And I think we need to respect that. I am very concerned with this idea that anybody would be using them as part of regular instruction. I don't think there would be a need, and I would like to see that stricken from our policy, because I just think as a district we need to say no to to requiring kids have one of these in the classroom, because if that's part of the class, we got to provide them. And so I'd like to just see that part of it taken out of our policy. Yes, the state may allow that, but no.
We'll do that research as well.
Yeah.
If that's-
I don't think it's a problem
Yeah, I don't believe so,
in our
especially if we
district,
provide
because
it.
we've got so much other technology that I think our teachers use really effectively.
Let's get at your iPads.
But I would just like to see that out of our policy.
But during passing periods, during nutrition break, during lunch break, when you're at the middle schools, the kids, I was at Bear Valley the other day, and the kid came up to the principal and said, may I use my cell phone to do X, Y, and Z? To call, they had to call mom, they forgot something. And they said, yes, go ahead. The kid took it out, called mom, and put it away.
Are we
So-
not seeing kids sitting off on
No,
their own?
Because they're enforcing it. And it's, when you enforce something and you start from the beginning, the expectations are known. Are you gonna have kids still violent? Of course. How many times does a teacher tell a kid to be quiet, right? But it's the frequent ones that
It'll
we
always
have
be
issues.
that
Right.
violator, yeah.
So again, you have a strong campaign as well. You set the expectations, the kids are gonna do it, are gonna follow it. 9 times, 90% of them, and then you'll have that 10% that.
And I also, by the way, like the third bullet under locking bags, the assistant principal's suggestion to have the locking bags, however many, for the persistent violators, that everybody's going to know who they are, and some will come on the radar, off the radar, but they immediately on getting on campus, you're giving up your phone. And if it's a burner phone and you're using another one later, well, then we're taking them both. And
What if we do that as a pilot as well? kind of see.
That
So we
sounds
have
like
the
a
locking
great-
bags as a pilot for beacon uses, and then the cabinets. And then we'll have more data, and then we'll bring this back to the board with our findings.
And what I can do with that is when we pilot those, I'll be interested to get feedback from the families, because I think you want to get that feedback as well as the staff on how those programs are working, and that would be nice to be able to test the bags and the lockers. Also want to point out, we want to use the words mobile communication device, because not only do we obviously have watches that you can call on, but they're now coming out with smart glasses that can act as phones, and that they'll be wearing, and then so we have to have an adaptable policy, so mobile communication device should work. And then also earbuds are considered part of that, because they connect to your phone wirelessly, so even if your phone isn't out, you can still be listening to
That's right.
who knows what, right? So
That's right. Go, Zesty.
Okay. Yeah, it is. Well, and actually, I wasn't going to say anything until you brought up your last point. My problem is it's everywhere, and it's going to be in the glasses, and it's going to be in smartwatches, and it's going to be in their ears. And so are we going to make the teachers task them all day, get off your phone, get off your mobile device? I agree with you. Like, they should not be on their phones. They should not be on their mobile devices in the class, but it is a reality of our society. And I think the campaign for awareness is really important. I'm reading those articles as well, not only the phones, but the iPads as well. As a mom who lets my kid go on the iPad constantly, I'm a terrible mother for that, but it's okay. She's going to be
But
fine.
I've seen you at the library
Yes,
with your
true,
kids.
true,
Yeah.
true. But I mean, it's a very plain reality for parents, and so I think I don't want to overburden the teacher with a reality that needs to be manageable in some way. And it's about teaching our students how to be citizens in these situations. They're going to have cyberbullying. They're going to be wanting these things. And how do we teach them to handle these situations? And you all always have those students that are, going to push those limits. So maybe there does need to be stricter consequences for those repeat violators. But I can guarantee you, I would be buying a burner phone for my daughter if she had to lock up one every day. I'm just letting you know, I'm a mama bear, and I need to be able to reach my child, and that's the reality of our society today. So I understand both sides, but in reality, that's what I want as a parent. I want to be able to reach my child, but at the same time, I expect my child to be respectful to her teacher and to be fully present in class and to be doing her best work and not being on her phone. So I think it's a line we have to walk. I appreciate the research, and I think if we just wait and see what happens at LA Unified, we're going to have plenty of case examples of what not to do. But again, I think it's more about helping the students understand what it is to be a good digital citizen and using those devices, which they're going to be more and more blending in, and how they need to use those properly and be respectful in the classroom and on campus. So I'm in support of what the board wants to do, because this is not a hill I want to die on, but just as a parent of these age students, that is my reality. Is they will have their phones on them, and I think you'll have a lot of parents that feel the same way. It's not the perfect solution. Every time I let them have the phone, there is negatives that come with it, but that is the reality. So those are my 2 cents. Sorry.
Okay, so I think we can agree on 3 things. We want to do a strong awareness campaign. We want to pilot a storage container at Quantum Academy to see how that works and what the feedback from parents is. And we want to try the 30 locking bags per middle school for use with persistent violators. And we also want to watch LA Unified, because the one thing they're great at is showing us what not to do. So thank you, LA Unified.
And I also have that. We'll get the legal opinion on the liability.
just a point of clarification, were you thinking one middle school to pilot or all of them?
I would think we could pilot at one unless additional ones wanted to try it, right?
I think one would be a good enough sample size to kind of.
And are we thinking we could get that
feedback, yeah.
through the end of this year so we could set a good
We'll definitely try to
program
get
for
that
next year?
initiated as soon as possible, for sure.
Might have to be a lottery.
Okay.
The locking cabinet would be more likely we could get done this year. I don't know about the yonder bag and its availability, getting it set up, getting the training, the magnet thing
Well,
to be done before the end of the year.
But, I mean, does it have to be a yonder bag? Couldn't it just be one of the simple, like, the bank deposit bags with a small lock on the end? I don't know that it needs to be a magnetic one.
I mean, yeah, we could.
What does Amazon have online? Let's see what we can get over.
Yeah, if we're not gonna go with the
I'm sure
yonder
that, I'm
program,
sure
yeah.
that we could work it out. I don't know if
Yeah.
it would be 30 anyway. I mean, if kids know, maybe we could get away with 10. I don't
Yeah.
know that we need to do the locking bag system. I mean, you know, they could also, I don't know that it has to be a locking bag. Can it be a filing cabinet like we do with confiscated phones now? I
So
don't know.
the idea with the locking bag, I believe, is the student carries that bag with them in their
Oh,
backpack.
the student carries it
Yeah.
with them.
Right.
We already could confiscate a phone and put it in a locked filing cabinet as it is in
Okay,
the office, for
I
instance.
get it.
Bag is shame.
So everybody is walking around with a bag.
Yes.
Oh.
They do these at concerts and stuff too, where they don't want there to be photography.
Okay. We'll see what we can do. I'm sure that you will do the best you can to get us a small sample size, a small pilot program.
Absolutely.
All right. Other comments? Anything else on the agenda, Michelle?
Just the adjournment announcement of the next meeting.
All right. And do you have that?
Yes, it is April 3rd at 7 p.m. here at the Carolyn Gilbert Education Center.
All right, so the next meeting is right here at the Carolyn Gilbert Education Center on April 3rd. Additionally, just want to remind everybody about the Smart Festival on March 22nd. That's next Saturday. Okay, the next Saturday, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the California Center for the Arts, Escondido. And with that, we are adjourned as soon as Ms. Gardner makes her announcement.
I actually got an email today from the California Center for the Arts announcing the Smart Festival and touting the collaboration between the Center for the Arts and Escondido Union School District. Are we paying to? Yes. We should get some.
Most definitely, we are paying.
There should be some return, given the fact that they're using us because they're trying to maintain their funding, obviously.
They also
in the
will
city.
be open on Sundays,
Yeah, they
Sunday
said
as
that.
well. So the
They're going to
festival's on
keep it for
Saturday.
ano-
Yeah,
For another day, the exhibition.
which is nice.
But yes, we did pay and are paying.
That's cold.
It's the way the contract was written, and some of us shall never understand.
Certain days
Right.
and certain facilities and everything. However, the
But-
fact that they are actually using us, saying, look how wonderful we are, we're collaborating with the school district. Nowhere did it say the school district.
We're
is
contracting
paying
with them.
us
Yeah.
For the use of the facilities.
But at our last, what's that? City
City
subcommittee.
school
This
subcommittee.
did come up because they have an art timeframe, and we brought up the fact that, look, Smart Festival needs to, next year, we'll put it right in line, because you're looking at funding some things, and we'll do it right in the middle of that time, and we will work with them they'll provide some funding, because they really need to do some advertisement and do some arts showcases for the
Sure.
community. So we'll be engaging with them on that.
Thank you.
And with that, we are adjourned.